Medieval Chronicles presents What If the Inquisition Had Never Existed? Faith, Fear, and Power in the Middle Ages. In the heart of medieval Europe, where faith ruled empires and silence protected survival, a single question echoes through time. What if the Inquisition had never existed? What if the fire that lit the pyres had never been lit? What if fear had not become the language of faith? The Middle Ages could have told a different story, one where truth, reason, and belief could walk side by side, instead of standing on opposite sides of the flame. The birth of fear, the 13th century, an age of devotion and doubt. Heresies rose like whispers against the cathedral walls. The Cathars, the Waldensians, voices that sought a simpler, purer faith. The Church, threatened by division, responded not with dialogue, but with judgment. Pope Gregory IX created the First Inquisition, a tribunal of faith, tasked with defending divine truth through human power. Inquisitors traveled from town to town, cloaked in authority and suspicion. To question doctrine was to question God himself. But what if the Church had chosen understanding over fear? What if those heretics had been seen not as enemies, but as seekers? Perhaps Europe would have found unity not through silence, but through diversity of belief. Faith as a weapon. As centuries turned, the Inquisition became more than a guardian of faith. It became an instrument of power. In Spain, Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand saw in it a way to forge their kingdom into one faith, one people, one destiny. The Spanish Inquisition burned with political fire, purging Jews, Muslims, and converts suspected of impurity. The cross and the crown walked hand in hand, and behind the chants of devotion echoed the march of control. But what if faith had never been tied to the throne? What if the kings of Europe had ruled with tolerance instead of terror? The Renaissance might have dawned earlier. The flames that consumed books and bodies might have fueled libraries instead. Women and the silence of fire among the countless accused, one truth burns brighter than the rest. Many were women, healers, midwives, visionaries, guardians of knowledge passed from mother to daughter. Some were wise women who understood herbs and the mysteries of life. Others, like Hildegard of Bingen, spoke with divine vision, yet walked a fine line between holiness and heresy. But in the later centuries, when fear of witchcraft swept through Europe, the Inquisition's methods became a template for persecution. What if those women had been celebrated instead of silenced? What if their visions had shaped theology, not threatened it? Perhaps the Middle Ages would not be remembered as an age of darkness, but as a dawn guided by feminine wisdom. The trial of knowledge, even the brightest minds were not safe. In 1633, Galileo Galilei stood before the Roman Inquisition, forced to deny what his telescope had revealed, that the Earth was not the center of the universe. The same church that once preserved ancient learning now feared the light of discovery. What if the Church had embraced science as the language of God, not a threat to his word? The Age of Enlightenment might have arrived a century earlier, and humanity's path toward knowledge might have been lit by faith, not divided from it. The Inquisition ended in name, but its shadow lingers. It taught Europe a lasting lesson that fear can be mistaken for piety, and that silence can be mistaken for peace. Books were burned, voices erased, and yet ideas never truly die. Perhaps the greatest irony of all is that the Inquisition, in trying to protect faith, revealed its most human flaw, the terror of uncertainty. And so we return to the question, what if the Inquisition had never existed? Perhaps the world would have found other ways to persecute, other reasons to divide, because the true Inquisition is not in history. It lives in every age that fears the freedom of thought. The flame has faded, but its shadow remains, reminding us that faith without compassion becomes its own prison. Have you ever felt like a story was missing a chapter? That behind the grand tapestries of kings and conquests, there were whispers and secrets left untold. The Middle Ages, an era often painted in broad strokes of knights and castles, is teeming with such mysteries. History as we know it is a narrative shaped by the victors, the powerful, and the literate. But what about the voices that were silenced? The truths that were deliberately buried, deemed too inconvenient or too revolutionary for their time? They didn't simply vanish. They're waiting in the shadows of crumbling ruins, hidden within the margins of ancient texts, and echoing in the folklore passed down through generations. If history teaches us anything, it is that truth cannot be destroyed, only delayed. Join us in the next episode as we journey deeper into the echoes of the Middle Ages, where every silence hides a story. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss it.